Hi guys, so this video is going to be the last of the regularly scheduled videos, I have a lot of notes here, because, I've told my story thus far of living with Asperger's, but I'm saying regularly scheduled video because any big event, new job, moving out, I'll come back here. Plus, there are more topics I could potentially discuss down the road. Two things I didn't discuss, and I toyed with the idea a lot and never got into detail. Domestic violence and socialism. Those are two things that have impacted my life or will impact my life, and I would like to potentially discuss more in future videos. I haven't done it this far because it felt like a bit of a gray area. Felt like I was starting to tell other people's stories. You know, my family drama had a huge impact on me. But in such an open forum as a public YouTube channel, I don't know that I want to get into detail. I don't know that my other family members would necessarily want me broadcasting our family details, so I haven't discussed those things. So that's a potential down the road. So I'm going to be looking at notes a lot. I had a big jumble of thoughts in my head I had to make coherent, so I will be looking down a lot. I apologize. So today's video is called Now and the Future. Basically, I'm going to tell you my plan for the future and what I'm doing now to get there. So to dive right in, my goal for the future, and when I say future, I'm thinking maybe, let's say 7 years, probably more than 5, less than 10, to get where I want with the steps I have in mind. So that goal is a 3-bedroom apartment. I would like to rent a 3-bedroom apartment. And you're probably wondering why I'm shooting so low, so I'm going to address that. In the Toronto area, in Toronto, our housing market is one of, if not the most out of control in the world. An average house price is about $900,000. An average 1-bedroom rental is about $1,900 a month. Now, granted, those numbers are being dragged up by rich neighborhoods, but they're not being dragged down by poor neighborhoods as much as you might like. In a working class neighborhood, you might still be paying $1,300 for a 1-bedroom apartment. So, realistically, for me to sit here and say I'm going to own a house one day is ridiculous. If this was a different decade, yes, I'd be sitting here telling you that my goal is to own a bungalow. I love post-war bungalows. Probably a little nostalgia there from the first house I lived in, which is kind of weird, but wasn't necessarily the most pleasant beginning, but whatever. I have that nostalgia ingrained. I love mid-century bungalows. I would love to sit here and say that's my goal, but in the Toronto area, that'll never happen. In other places in Ontario, things can be much cheaper, but my income will still probably never match what I would need to buy. So that's not a goal. I'm not setting myself an unrealistic goal. My goal is to rent a 3-bedroom apartment, and I'm already on baby steps to getting there. So you might know I'm currently living at home. This is my bedroom behind me. I'm in a basement bedroom. And I'm currently living at home because I did live on my own for a year and a half. This has all been discussed in previous videos. I had to leave the job. I had a major depressive episode. And then without my job income, I only had my benefit, which I've also talked about my benefit. Not enough money to support myself, so I had to go back home. And as a little aside here, I think it's pathetic that as somebody with autism, and maybe call me entitled if you want, but I think it's pathetic that there was no alternative, nowhere else for me to go. My only option is subsidized housing, and the lists here are ludicrous. Other parts of the province do have shorter lists, and I've toyed with the idea of applying in other parts of the province. It's kind of on the back burner right now. I may have found a resource that will allow me to stay here. It would be ideal to stay here right now while I'm still working on steps, because all my doctors are here, my family's here, everything I know is here. So it would make more sense for me to stay here while I'm working on things and then move down the road. So it wouldn't be ideal for me right now to run to another part of the province. But I've toyed with that. And I'm hoping this other resource comes through, but I think again I'm stuck on a wait list. It's the Canadian Mental Health Association. I have a feeling I'm low priority because I'm not homeless, but I realize that I could be. If I didn't have my parents, for whatever reason, house to go to, I would be homeless. And I'm bringing this up because it ties back into autism. I don't know offhand the numbers of people living on the streets in Toronto and Ontario who have autism or whose income is ODSP, but I would imagine it would be pretty high. And I find that absolutely pathetic. And the reason that this aside sort of ties into my future, not only did I want to express that frustration, but something I would like to do potentially more in the future of is autism advocacy. I've done so far one speech at a fundraiser, and I've toned down the goal a little bit because I actually sometimes feel like a bit of an outcast in the autism community because the neurodiversity movement is getting so strong, and I talked about that in another video, how I don't support that. And I'm finding it hard, so I don't know if I'll have a big, huge speaking career, an advocacy career. I still want to speak, I still want to advocate. I've toned that down a bit, but it's not gone, it's not done. And if I do get opportunities, I want to speak about what I just talked about, lack of services for adults on the high end of the spectrum. There should have been somewhere for me to go until I was ready to go back out on my own. I had, like I said, a home to come to. Not everyone does. And to me, that's appalling. People, adults on the high functioning end of the spectrum, are forgotten about, or there's no services. And that's something I want to talk about if I do autism advocacy in the future. And the other thing I would talk about would be employment. I feel like I'm qualified to talk about employment challenges for those with Asperger's. I have a lot of notes here, like I said, I apologize. I toyed with the idea of having education as a speaking goal, but my experiences are too narrow. I've experienced one school board in one part of Ontario. My experiences are too narrow there, so I've dropped that. But yeah, that's definitely something I hope to see in my future, and I'm not going to stop trying. And to sort of pivot back to my 3-bedroom apartment goal and the baby steps I kept referring to. So right now what I do, I babysit on Monday evenings, and on Wednesday evenings I volunteer in the cat adoption area at a PetSmart, and that's been going really well. I've been doing both things for about 7 months, almost 7 months. So I'm maintaining them really well. I'm handling those two commitments on top of appointments and leisure activities. Although when I say leisure activity, all I have going on right now is some aquafit classes. Um, Although I would love to add in more things. There's things I'm interested in. Um, Bowling, indoor rock climbing, trampolining, high diving, like you see in the Olympics. All not at that level, but the 10-meter, diving board looks like a lot of fun. So I definitely have leisure activities I want to add in, or down the road, who knows? Again, this video is about the future. So right now my one leisure activity is aquafit. So I'm handling that and my two commitments and whatever appointments come up. I'm handling all of that very well. So I decided recently to add in a third weekly commitment. I applied to volunteer. Sorry. I applied to volunteer with the Learning Disability Association as a volunteer tutor, so that's in progress. So soon I will have 3 commitments a week on top of leisure and appointments. And if I maintain that successfully for a number of months, I will start looking for a small part-time job. Like I'm thinking towards the end of this year, I will start looking for the small part-time job and slowly increasing my hours if I'm successful. And I want to sort of explain, when I keep saying successful, what that means to me. It doesn't just mean retaining the job, although that's the big one. For the job to be successful for me, I can't be debilitated with fatigue or pain, and I can't be having emotional issues. So, obviously, some of that's external. Don't work as a cashier. I'm gonna have sore feet and get pissed off at everybody. So, obviously, some of that comes from choosing the right job, but far more of that is internal. So, I'm working on ways of managing my fibromyalgia pain and of improving my emotional control so those won't be such big challenges in the workplace so that I can maintain a job without those things being challenges. To be honest, I'm not really sure there's a whole lot I can do about my fatigue. Some of it's probably medication side effects, possibly some bad habits at night, sleeping. Although I'm not sure that's in my case that big of a factor, although it's probably a factor. Um, Fibromyalgia causes fatigue, not sure what I can do. In terms of pain management, I'm doing very well. I've done physiotherapy in the past. I'm going to do some more. I'm seeing a chiropractor, which I'm not huge into alternative therapies. But this came recommended by my brother, who's very scientific, doesn't believe in woo woo. This is not a kind of chiropractor who claims she can cure everything. She only is focused on my back, so it seems to be working well for me. I'm happy to say. And I also have prescription meds for pain management. And the prescription meds are, I think they're a tool. They get my pain down to a level where I can then engage in the other therapies. And that's very similar to emotional control. I have an amazing psychiatrist. The woman's a walking encyclopedia. And she's constantly tweaking my medications. I have medication for depression and anxiety. She's constantly tweaking them and trying to get it as best as she can for me. And I want to talk about actually antidepressants here for a second, another little aside, because there's this big contingent of people on the internet who think antidepressants are a scam or a placebo. And what I say is, are they overdiagnosed? Probably. The numbers seem ridiculous. But to say that nobody needs them and they're a scam, that's baloney. Don't tell a suicidal person that if she goes and stands under the sun chewing on a dandelion, she'll be just fine. I already said I'm not big into alternative therapies. The real issue I have is people making false claims. Um, like naturopath, I won't touch. I don't know what's in the bottle. I don't know if the government doesn't regulate it well. I don't know if the bottle contains what it says it contains. It can be covered in false claims. I'm not interested in that stuff. I'm going to take my prescription medication. Thank you very much. Um, I recognize that the mind is a very powerful thing, and mind over matter, and those kind of, some ancient things like meditation, I still have a place today because there's, a noticeable effect on people. But in order for me to get any use out of whether it be ancient meditation or modern DBT therapy, in order for me to get any use out of those things, I have to be medicated first. When I'm depressed and not medicated, I'm awake all night, sleeping all day, eating cake for dinner. I'm not a rational person to partake in therapy. I need to get leveled first, um, before I, can partake in therapy. And people will say science doesn't know everything, that pills are a placebo. The placebo effect is pretty strong. A lot of alternative medicine is probably the placebo effect. And mind over matter is pretty strong. And science doesn't know everything, although there's always research going on into stuff I'm talking about. But no, antidepressants are not placebos, and that's been proven scientifically. And believing in science should not be an option. I don't know why it is. So that's my aside about antidepressants. So in addition to working with a psychiatrist, I'm seeing a counselor to talk about some of my family issues and some other issues. And I'm interested in, I mentioned briefly there, DBT therapy, dialectical behavior therapy. So I'm interested in various mindfulness work so I can focus on living right now. I'm interested in getting lots of different tools on board to improve my emotional control as much as possible so that I can function in a workplace, so I don't lose my patience so fast, so I don't get annoyed with people so fast. So that, as well, and the pain management stuff I talked about, are the things I'm currently working on. Some things I'm already doing, some things are in the pipe, and these are all things to make, like I said, to make work successful. And if anyone has any brilliant ideas on the fatigue, that would be amazing. So to pivot back once again to my, excuse me, I don't know what's going on. What's my 3-bedroom apartment goal? Once I get a small part-time job, I'm hoping by the end of this year, maybe early next year. The next step would be to slowly increase the hours, whether it's increasing the hours at the same job or having more than one job. The goal would be to see how far I can take it, with the hope being that I can take it to the point where I can afford to rent a 1-bedroom apartment with my work income and ODSP combined. And I would not be living in a $1,900 apartment. I'd be in a working class area in the quote unquote cheaper type apartment. Um, and then it's all about maintenance. I'd have to maintain those jobs in that apartment for a number of years. No meltdowns, no moving back home. Well, meltdowns are going to happen. No major crises, no moving back home. And if and only if, after a number of years, if I maintain the 1-bedroom, would I move on to looking for a bigger apartment? And I said 3 bedrooms, although I should say 2 to 3 bedrooms, because I can't predict exactly how much money I'm going to have and how much things are going to cost. But that is going to be a big step when I get there, because I'm going to have to leave the Toronto area. Financially, it won't be possible here. And I've decided that this is what I want. I can get more for my money somewhere else, so it makes sense to me. And so yeah, so that's what I'm going for. So you might be wondering what I'm gonna do with extra bedrooms. So one of the bedrooms would be my sensory room. I have a lava lamp that's right next to me here. You can't see it. I have other light stuff. I could get stuff to touch, exercise ball to bounce on, things to smell, like essential oils to smell. I believe aromatherapy is relaxing, even if it doesn't heal all the things people say it heals. So yes, one bedroom would be a sensory bedroom, and the other room I'm sort of referring to it as the museum. I like collecting old dolls. You can see a few doll type things behind me here. I only have a few. I don't have a ton of space right now, for displaying, so it would be nice to have a room to display my collections. My dolls. I have stuffed toys, which are kept in Rubbermaid bins in a closet, because I'm allergic to dust. So I'd love to have a separate space to display my stuffed toys, stuffed animals. Sounds more mature. I'd have to have a space to display them away from where I'm sleeping. And the other thing that would go in that room would be books. I love books. I have tons of books. I sound like Donald Trump. um, and yeah, again, to have lots of space for books and to keep them dusty books away from where I sleep because I'm allergic to dust. So that's what the 3rd bedroom would be for, and that's definitely the most fantastical. You know, if I can only afford 2 bedrooms, that's still, to me, accomplishing the goal. The one sort of wrench in things is my mom and stepdad. They're both retired now. They're ready to downsize. My hair is weird today. They're ready to downsize. They're both retired, but they can't seem to make up their mind. I don't know if they're going to move around the corner or 10 hours away. They can't, probably somewhere in between the two. But it would be really nice to know, because right now I'm benefiting. I'm a little over dependent on my mother, if I'm being honest. I tend to lean on her a lot for support, and I'd like to gain more confidence, through counseling and whatnot, to be more of an independent adult, but I'm not quite there yet. So I want to still be relatively close to her. So that's why the plan right now is to have the 1 bedroom in this area. But because I'm in the planning, she's still living in the area, and I'm in my 1 bedroom, and she can help me as needed. And then as I get more independent, I can leave the Toronto area for my 2 or 3 bedroom and be farther away from her and be okay. The wrench is that I don't know where she's going to live. So if they take off from the Toronto area, I may have to follow and get a 1 bedroom somewhere else, and I may have to sort of tweak the plan. Um, but I'll make it work. Life has thrown stuff at me for 29 years, and I've always made it work, and I'll keep making it work. It's annoying that I can't get a straight answer out of them. Um, so you've probably noticed I haven't mentioned a romantic partner at all. I don't know. I don't know if I'll get married. I've never dated. Partially because I don't socialize a lot, so don't have a ton of chances to meet people. But if I wanted to, I could make an online profile. I mean, it's easy now, but I'm not interested right now. I have moments like I'll hear like a really romantic story, and I'll think, wouldn't it be wonderful if that was me? But then the day-to-day nitty-gritty of living with someone, of having to watch my social skills, of having to be on, sounds like a lot more work than I would get benefit out of it. So as of right now, that's not in the plan. But that's not to say never. Um, so I'll end off here with a couple of things. Sorry, I'm just gonna pull out this paper. Yes, that's right. Sorry about that. So I'll leave off with a couple of other sort of things that are floating out around there for my future. I would love pet rats. I've always wanted. This is the most realistic one, so I'm starting with this one. I've always wanted pet rats. My mom is scared of rats. For some reason, I didn't get them when I lived on my own for a year and a half. I had the opportunity, I didn't take it. So once I'm on my own again, I do want pet rats. Another thing I've thought about is editing. This is just some random thoughts I'm throwing in at the end here. I'm always editing people's grammar, um, online and everything. And at first I thought it would be fairly easy to get an editing job, but I'm realizing there's different types of editing. They're going to want me to have formal education if I'm working in an office. I don't know how well I would do freelancing, so I'd still be interested in editing, but I don't have formal training. I have no intention of going back to school. So I don't really know what's going to go on there. Another thing I want to get into in the future is urban exploration, which you might have heard of. And what I'm interested in specifically is exploring old houses. In my area, all the time, they board up old houses to develop the land. And I'm attracted to old buildings. What's the building story? How long has it been here? Who lived here? What was their story? I love reading memoirs and learning people's stories. And I found this website where people were posting pictures of these houses they were going into. And again, I could have done it when I lived on my own. When you live at home, your parents notice when you're coming and going. And they would spaz at me if they found out I was doing that. But when I was living on my own, I could have done it. I even communicated with an experienced person. I started even making plans, and I was going to bring along somebody I knew for safety, an experienced person, and I chickened out. And I still want to, um, so I'll wrap up on these last two things are sort of my fantasies. My fantasy job, 10 years ago, I wouldn't have considered it a fantasy, but now it does seem like that. My fantasy job is called a child life assistant. I'm mentioning this. I don't know what my actual job is going to be. I love working with children. I don't want to return to a formal childcare environment, though. It is pretty stressful. So if I could work with children in another capacity, that would be great. Not 100% sure right now exactly what kind of job I'm going to have. And I'm not hugely obsessed with climbing a career ladder or anything. As long as it's something I enjoy. And I'm pretty good at keeping myself entertained. It could be fairly mindless, and I could still handle it. Like I was saying, my fantasy job would be child life assistant. Now, a child life specialist has a bachelor's degree in child development and an additional certificate, and they work in hospitals with children, preparing them for surgery or procedures. And I discovered that there's a position called child life assistant who works with a child life specialist, and all that's required for that job is a 2-year college diploma related to children, which includes my diploma, ECE. So if I was typical, if I didn't have all these other challenges, if I wasn't fatigued and emotional and in pain, I would be chomping at the bit to be a child life assistant. I love medicine. I love children. To work in a hospital would be amazing. But that's, if that somehow happened one day, if one day I can work full time and I had that job, that would be amazing. But that's not a goal. I'm not setting myself up for failure like that. Even the goals I have now, I have to remind myself if for some reason I don't get quite as far in this plan as I want to, I have to keep reminding myself I'm not a failure. That I have to keep reminding myself that I'm trying, and I have to always keep trying. So setting myself up with a goal like being child life assistant, that's no. That's I need to have small reasonable goals and even remind myself I'm not a failure if I don't get there. So I would not set up a goal like that. And the very last thing, I think everyone has their rich person fantasy, where they would live and what they would do if they were rich. My thing is a hobby farm in England. I want to go to rural England. I want to own a farm property, but not a working farm. I just want animals like pot-bellied pigs and goats, and just something fun. But that's my rich person fantasy. So unless I marry a self-made rich person, and have to be self-made, I can't tolerate if you don't understand the value of a dollar. So if I marry a rich person, that'll be my fantasy life. But it remains a fantasy, and I would drive a VW bus. I don't own a car. If electric vehicles become practical, I may own one, but I have no plans to own one right now, because of the environmental impact and the cost. But if I had, money, if money was no object, I would get a VW bus. Maybe make that electric if that's possible. I'm not huge into cars. Don't know if that's possible. That would be amazing. Don't know why I'm obsessed with those particular vehicles, but I am. Excuse me again. And this is turning out to be probably my longest video. So I'm going to wrap it up now. Thank you.